Welcome, acolytes. Today I am reacting to how money works. Non-corporates ruin your career. They are banned. Non-competes. Non-competes. Now I get it. It's the thing where you cannot take another job for a certain time that's basically, as I understand, totally effing useless. Like, it's purely there to actually just undermine anything you could have had in any kind of way. It's just total bullshit, but okay, let's just do that. And this got banned in America. I'm gonna be honest, if that's true, that's something I am all for. Because those non-competitive, non-competitors things in the contract is total freaking balls. It has actually nothing to search. It's purely there to actually just put a thumbs up on the worker and just press them down. But let's just hear what he has to say about it, and let's start.
Corporate America has just lost one of the most powerful tools to keep people from getting better jobs. Non-compete agreements that ban workers from finding a better job have been used to keep wages low. And even if you have never personally signed one of these agreements, they will almost certainly still be hurting you. Late last month, the FTC banned these deals from being put into contract for most employees.
Wait, what? So this is already... I almost cannot believe it, to be honest. This would be great. Yeah, this would be really effing great. I hate those things. Damn. But as I said, I just don't really believe it. It sounds way too good to be true. It's simple as that.
And most existing non-competes will be phased out over the next 3 months. Unless you run a business that relies on keeping employees in bad conditions for poor pay, this ruling will be good for you. But...
Yep, it will. It will. If you're a normal freaking human being that actually just does his stuff, it will be a good thing. For companies that abuse those kinds of things, well, they won't be as happy for that. But for everyone else, businesses that actually run on for the business sake, great.
That doesn't mean that corporate America is going down without a fight.
Welcome back. The Federal Trade Commission has just voted to ban almost all non-compete agreements between companies and their employees. That new ban also applies to any existing non-compete agreements.
Hey, Tony, good morning. The Federal Trade Commission wants to make it easier for you to get a new job.
Final rule that would, in effect, ban most businesses from using non-compete clauses in hiring.
A non-compete clause.
Damn, this, as I said, this would be so fantastic. This would be, but I really doubt, I mean, it's already true as he says, but as I know, there's a little problem because they can sue for it. And, well, we know how judges are these days, or how the entire thing actually works. So, at the end of the day, we just have to wait and see what this entire thing is about, and if it even comes true and stays the way it is, because sadly it is what it is, and it could just go away as quickly as it actually came.
Clause is a condition in a contract which bans an employee from working for another company for some amount of time after they quit or get fired from their current position. Companies claim that these terms were very important, because they didn't want to spend their time and money training staff and giving them proprietary information just for them to get a job with their competitor and take all that valuable information over to them. To play devil's advocate.
So yeah, and there is a pretty easy way of actually excluding that possibility. Pay them well enough. Just pay them enough. That's all. People who actually get treated well don't change the firm that easy. And yes, there are some scumbags that will actually do it, but there aren't that many. Those won't be like freaking 50% of workers. That's just a little sum of people, most of the time on the very top, not on the bottom, on the very top. So yeah, it's just what firms created They have to deal with it, but they're dealing with it by doing freaking corrupt stuff that actually only puts down not the giant management workers, but the little guys that actually have to work to survive. Not the big ones. The big ones don't give a fuck if they do this or something else and make their millions. That's relevant to them.
For some employees, this kind of makes sense. High-level company executives, R&D staff, and even sales staff might have company information that would be valuable to a competitor and detrimental to their business if they got out. If the CFO at a company got a job at a competitor and they knew that their old company was having cash flow problems, their new company could use that information to run them out of business. Sales staff could also call up all of their client list and bring them over to a new company since they know the exact details of deals they were getting with their old company. Spoiler alert for a 20-year-old show, but Michael Scott wouldn't have been able to start Michael Scott Paper Company, which nearly put his old employer out of business, if he had signed a non-compete agreement. Scott knew his old clients and how much they were paying for their paper, so he was able to undercut his old company by calling them up and giving them a better deal. This was good for the customers, and good for healthy competition, but it wasn't good for the large incumbent Dunder Mifflin, who got outcompeted by a smaller, more efficient operator.
Yes. And is this bad? If you hear that, is this bad? Because I would say no. I think this is a very, very good thing. I'm gonna be honest, I love that things like that can happen. Because then you're always on your top game. Just the fear of losing everything is enough to actually treat people with some kind of respect. And that's the only way how you get stuff like that done. Because most of the time, no. Simply no. It won't happen otherwise. You really have to get a thumb up there and just be like, nope, you're doing it wrong. Just, this is bullshit. But that's something normal people like us cannot do. We don't have the power to influence it. Well, we actually have. If every single one that works there would just say, okay, I'm quitting because I don't get paid enough, something would change, but it's only just because, they won't do money. Or if people would actually be like, hey, okay, those workers get effed over, I'm not buying from that. This also won't happen. And why? Because, well, we need our things. And most people just don't give a shit. And while I give a shit, I cannot afford it, to be honest. Just totally.
Businesses have argued that they can't operate if they have no legal means to protect their valuable information. They have also said that without non-compete agreements, their competitors could free ride off them by just poaching their staff after they have made the investment into hiring and training inexperienced workers. The Federal Trade Commission and its controversial new chair, Lena Khan, have basically called this out as complete bullshit. In their announcement of a stop of non-compete agreements being put into employment contracts, the FTC also said that even if this does hurt some big businesses, that's actually a good thing. The free rider argument really doesn't work because those businesses could also attract their own talent from their competitors too. All they need to do is give their employees a more attractive job offer, and most people are happy to switch jobs. If people do take company information with them, the FTC argues that the only group this is bad for is a company that doesn't want to compete. Companies also don't need non-competes to protect themselves from people taking their intellectual property. Patent, trademark, and industry secret laws already exist. And
Yep, and you can afford it as a big company. Smaller companies have a problem with that, but big companies don't even give a fuck about their smaller findy-bob enemies. That's relevant to them. They just do whatever they're doing anyway. And if you're actually that hot for something, for some information out of the enemy firm, you know how you do it? You say to someone, okay, you get more money than they do, you get us the information. They hire the person. There is, of course, not a gigantic chance of this happening, but it's still a chance. There is a relatively big chance if you give someone who actually perfectly fits the job, they get their information and then just go away. If you're that freaking hot for it. And I know this is a thing of that actually It takes a lot of time of preparing, but it's not impossible.
Disclosure agreements where previous employees can't legally disclose information about their previous employers are still totally enforceable. Dunder Mifflin was a work of fiction, but many real companies are forced to offer better services at better prices and pay their employees more competitive salaries, because an ex-employee of theirs learned about their industry and started a better firm with the experience they gained working for their old employer. Most successful companies are started by people who were previously employees working for a company in the same industry.
And by the way, another thing that's actually a thing that is, if you learn some of those things, there are a lot of things that are just specifically company things. So just because you learn something in this company doesn't mean that you can one-to-one just get it out and do exactly the same thing in a different company. You still have to learn things to a certain degree. Yes, the basics are there, and the basics may actually be at the point where you just say, okay, good, this is something I'm having here. But those company-specific things, those are basically just for the company. That's all. There isn't anything extra about it. You cannot get everything you want out of it and just, well, get the information from there and get the exact same, a lot of worth out of it by just doing it somewhere else. That's not how this works entirely.
Gary Tan, the CEO of Y Combinator, an early-stage startup incubator, has said that the best companies he deals with are ones started by people who first gained experience in the industry they want to disrupt by working in it. The Federal Trade Commission estimated in the report that this new rule will lead to the formation of at least 8,500 extra businesses every year and between 17,000 and 29,000 new patents every year. According to the organization's research, these are all being blocked because people aren't legally allowed to innovate or start a business. The only people that lose in this situation are the companies that don't want to compete, which is why it's the FTC, not the Department of Labor, that made this ruling. The FTC is normally the organization in charge of making sure that businesses aren't forming monopolies. It does this by blocking mergers or acquisitions that would give the new mega corporations too much power. In the last 3 years, the FTC has been trying their best to stop some large company mergers, but they have so far lost all of their recent cases in court, allowing the mergers to go ahead. The FTC can also...
Yeah, that's sadly, really sadly a big gigantic thing that they are basically just useless because the system is so corrupt at this point that big companies can just do what the fuck they actually want. It's so freaking sad. Well, it's still not extremely bad, but it's bad to a degree where we should get worried, and I mean big time worried. It's slowly becoming a freaking second Russia. And I mean everywhere in the Western world, not just in America. So don't even think about that I'm only saying this one country is out of their minds and it's only here. No. America is most of the times one of the first horsemen to actually implement things like that.
Also break up companies that have too much market power, but it hasn't done that in over 40 years. So what the FTC really does most of the time is make rulings like non-compete agreements being a form of anti-competitive practice, which is illegal. You wouldn't think that this would be a hard case for them to make since the words non-compete are right there in the name. But the FTC is already being sued over this ruling by an industry body representing companies. But let's be honest with one another. Even though the companies and the FTC won't admit it, non-compete agreements were never about competition between one company and another.
True.
It was about competition between a company and its employees.
True.
So it's time to learn how money works to find out how this ruling could change the job landscape, and the loopholes that companies will use to undermine it. This week's lesson is sponsored by Brilliant. Brilliant is an educational platform designed for thorough comprehension of the subjects taught. It focuses on a bottom-up learning strategy, starting with the fundamentals and involving students in interactive problem-solving activities. Interactive learning supports the immediate practical use of the...
Oh, and by the way, I actually, if you have problems with problem-solving, just do stuff like this. This is actually a good thing.
Knowledge gained, proving to be 6 times more effective than traditional video lectures. The content available on Brilliant is carefully crafted by an esteemed group of educators, scholars, and professionals from leading organizations and institutions such as MIT, Caltech, Duke, Microsoft, Google, and more. Brilliant offers a wide range of excellent courses on programming-related topics, including thinking in code, creative coding, and programming with Python. These courses introduce you to Python programming, equipping you to begin crafting software immediately, and they cultivate a programmer's way of thinking. With Brilliant, learning is accessible from anywhere using a computer, smartphone, or tablet. Brilliant provides opportunities to acquire authentic knowledge in just a few minutes each day with its captivating and enjoyable lessons, seamlessly integrating into your schedule whenever time permits. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/howmanyworks or click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. The real reason that non-compete agreements have become such a big issue in America is because they are not being used as they were originally intended, stifling innovation and making it illegal for talented people to...
Yes, the thing is, the concept of the entire thing is actually quite noble. Because initially it was actually, as I understand it, it was used for smaller films to actually be a bit safer so they don't get effed over on every freaking corner they can. Because at the end of the day, if you're a small company, you know you're gonna get effed over by the big ones, and if you have a good idea, a big one just comes here and says, okay, I'm gonna pay you this and this much, but you're gonna give me the information. You know that's happening, I know that's happening, it is what it is, or that would happen. But this was initially. Right now it's just getting abused to just, well, get rid... just to F over the worker. It's basically that simple. Like, as soon as you're under the thumb of a gigantic company like that, you're just under the thumb and you're just fidgeted. Yeah, so...
to start competing companies was already pretty bad, but companies just started using these contracts to trap their employees in bad jobs. According to research done by S&P Market Intelligence on 67,000 workers, 1 in 6 service workers in the fast food industry had a non-compete agreement as part of their contract.
Yes, and explain to me, how the F would a burger flipper even have any kind of power in this case? What effing information can he give that would actually harm the gigantic the bigger company, without the big company actually just, or the enemy company wouldn't know? What information is there? How to flip a burger? How the recipe is? What's exactly in there? Because none of this information is actually there for the burger flipper. So it just doesn't make sense for them. It's just bullcrap. And he's gonna... no valuable. Basically, he's gonna say, I am sure he's gonna say the same that I just did, but it's so freaking obvious. It's and so enraging because it just destroys people's life for no freaking reason.
Company information, and they don't pose a threat to revenue.
Yes, that's what I just freaking said because it's so, I think, obvious. Okay.
Nobody is going to stop eating at Five Guys and go to Chick-fil-A just because Freddy the Fry Guy changed jobs. What it does, though, is make it very hard for minimum wage workers to find another job that they have experience for. So even if they could earn more, or if they are being asked to work unfair conditions, they can't quit because they are not allowed to work anywhere else.
Yep.
Giving fast food managers that much power over minimum wage staff has not only cut down on wage growth for the people that need it the most, according to the FTC, it's also created unsafe working conditions, enabled wage theft, and made career advancement slower because nobody dares to complain. Workers making lower incomes were also found to be the ones least likely to argue against the inclusion of non-compete agreements in their contracts because they were afraid that they would lose a job offer they desperately needed at the time. It might sound bad locking people with the least negotiating power into bad jobs they can't escape from, but non-competes have actually been used to control a group that gets even worse than this. A report by Johns Hopkins University found that 45% of vital healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, and support staff are employed under a non-compete agreement. Doctors are required by law to share any information pertaining
and the telephone goes ring again. Damn. On the grind again. But as it is, good. It just
Other
continue.
licensed providers, provided the patient provides consent, and training is based on industry standards. So the only reason that hospitals are doing this is to lock in the staff they have at a time where there is a desperate shortage of medical workers in the country. Doctors practicing in a hospital are highly likely to start their own practice as part of their natural career progression. A non-compete can potentially stop that, making clients go through the hospital to deal with the doctor of their choice. That's not only bad for doctors and nurses who could find better jobs or start their own business, it's bad for you. The FTC estimates that providing more competition in the medical industry and encouraging more businesses with less overhead to enter the market, medical costs can be reduced by as much as $194 billion over the next decade. Now, even if you aren't under...
But yes, this is one of the consequences, yes. I actually have a buddy of mine as a doctor, and he says, yes, this is freaking... He would want to open his own practice, but he just... For now, cannot until he actually gets enough money on his freaking cap to actually do it. Because of the non-compete, he has to... How long is it? A year? 1 year. 1 entire year. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know if it's legal. I told him, hey, talk to an actual attorney because this cannot be... legal, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it, but he didn't, so I think he's just settled on his way. He's just gonna go for a year of non-payment and just hope he survives it this time. And he's married and has 2 kids, so not that easy, to be honest, not that easy. But hey, yeah. And he told me basically the same. That actually was my point, but I rambled again a bit. But it's so freaking stomach-turning, puke-inducing. This is just terrible, all in all. I hate it.
For a non-compete agreement, these deals are pushing down market rates for most jobs, especially those in industries with a lot of worker competition. The FTC estimates that typical workers will earn an additional $524 a year after this change, whether or not they had a non-compete in place. It should also make finding a job easier because companies won't be able to hold their employees captive in their positions, which means they will need to hire more often. That's really what companies are angry about, even if they won't say it out loud. But don't get too excited yet, because these companies still have a few loopholes to fight back with. Most non-compete agreements would be extremely hard to enforce already. But for a minimum wage employee between jobs, the threat of expensive legal action with big fancy sounding contracts was enough to keep them in line. Companies will easily be able to find other conditions that achieve the same thing. Already, 95% of employees who have a non-compete agreement in their contract also have a non-disclosure agreement in their contract, which employers could use to make the same kinds of threats. The FTC warned employers that make non-disclosure agreements so broad that it would prevent their employees from getting another job that it will be counted as the same kind of non-competitive practice. But that still requires a regular employee to file a legal complaint against their employer, which, let's be honest...
Yeah, he's gonna say it again, let's be honest.
Not many people are going to do. Companies could also do something even more sinister and make contracts with each other in so-called non-poach agreements that cut out the need for any formal agreement with employees at all. According to the legal firm Schneider Wallace, a no-poaching agreement is when 2 or more companies come to an agreement to limit hiring of each other's employees. The agreement is to not poach employees of the other firm in exchange for the same not happening to their employees. These agreements are usually deemed anti-competitive and illegal, but they are incredibly hard to find, especially in industries like fast food, where handshake deals can be made between local franchise owners. Even if these practices are investigated, the fines to settle the case are usually less than the cost of paying employees competitive local rates, so it can be written off as the cost of doing business. Companies can also maintain any non-compete agreements they have with senior executive level staff, just to make sure that every company in America didn't conveniently promote all of their staff to the level of senior executive cashier. The rule only applies to staff that earn over $150,000 in the previous year and who are in genuine policy-making positions. Employers can't add new non-compete agreements to these employees.
Yes, and this makes sense. Because somebody on their higher up, they can actually have some company over. That's fine. As I said, I'm only worried about the little people that actually have not really, that aren't really a risk. And this is the absurd thing, that this is legal in some kind of way. But yeah, it is what it is.
But they are allowed to keep the existing ones in place, which means if the ruling is enforced, eventually someone is going to be the last person in America working under a non-compete agreement. But that's if all of this actually happens. The FTC can make rulings about what it's going to enforce, but it's still up to the courts to decide what is legal or not according to the law. The FTC has unsurprisingly already been sued by the US Chamber of Commerce and a few other businesses around the country that are arguing that this ruling is not legal according to any existing federal law. The FTC has been on a bit of a losing streak with its big legal battles. So while this ruling is definitely worth celebrating, businesses still have a hope of getting their way. Now, in the spirit of empowering workers who actually make the business function, instead of promoting our newsletter or another one of our videos, I want you to all go and watch Story Jerk. A writer that has been on my team for over a year now made his own channel to talk about the art of storytelling, and it hasn't really taken off yet, which is a shame because he's incredibly talented. So if you're interested in film, I am going to link you to one of his best videos to show you that empowering people who work for you is always better than controlling them. But please make sure to like and subscribe to keep on learning how money works.
Yeah, this is a disgusting way of actually handling the non-disclosures things. It's... Yeah, instead of actually... And I probably sound like a commie with this, but if you actually pay people properly, like in a proper way, that's just enough. The things wouldn't be even half bad. Like, everybody would have something to be good about, but how it runs now, it's just shit, pure effing unfiltered shit. It can get better. It's not that we're lost, but entirely lost, but it's still not a good look for now. But well, let's hope for the best. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But as it is, acolytes, good night.